Do you have enough faith? Jesus says, don't worry about that. I've given you the gift of faith and the sacrament of holy baptism. And that's all that matters. It will always be enough for you and for what I want you to do. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13 says, be watchful, stand firm in your faith. A cluster of imperatives draws this letter to a close. Watch, stand fast, and so on. Don't you just love those? I do. We're lured by the promise of the gospel, but still need to be reminded to let go of ourselves and conform to the one who died on the cross for you and me and was raised to new life for our sake. I remember a few years ago, I had a friend that was an engineer who showed up for work one day and was sent packing. It was actually kind of awful. I mean, they laid him off and he needed the money. And the only thing he could find was as a security guard, actually as a night watchman in a big, huge warehouse. And it was the weirdest thing. He showed this to me. He had kind of a round thing. It was maybe a little bit smaller than a football, maybe 3/4 the size. And it hung on a big, long strap. He had it over his shoulder. And he was supposed to spend every one of his shifts all night long, overnight, walking throughout this warehouse according to a certain pattern. And then he would walk for a little bit, and then there would be this little box with a key hanging from it. Then he would stick it in this little thing that he had hanging around his neck, and it would punch a hole in a piece of paper that was inside of it. And he'd go from one thing to the other, and somehow or other, that thing documented the fact that, that he spent the whole night on the job, watching, on the lookout. Well, I told you my friend was an engineer. He did that one night and he thought, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to be doing this all night. So he found a desk to sit at, took that little thing apart, took out the long strip of paper, figured out that he could take a pencil and poke holes in the right spots on that paper and then sleep for the other 7.5 hours of his shift and not bother to walk through that warehouse. When he told me about that, I didn't laugh because I was afraid he was going to get let go from that job too. But before anybody figured out what he was up to, they took him back to that engineering firm that he was working at previously. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13 says, hey, it's not a game. It's not like being, a night watchman where you can game the system. The apostle says in plain language, imperatives, be watchful, stand firm in your faith. And yes, you most certainly do have enough faith. That's really where Grace to Go starts.